Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Wednesday, March 11th, 2020. And our top stories today, coronavirus and pension risk management. And then we'll take a closer look at the Employees Retirement System of Georgia. Well, joining me now is Jim Potvin. He is the Executive Director of the Employees Retirement System of Georgia. Jim, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jeff. My pleasure.
And I should also make mention that you are also this year's president of the National Association of State Retirement Administrators, or NASRA, a very prominent organization that is responsible for you cover all the administrators of many of the nation's pension plans, public pension plans. So let's just dive right in. I mean, there's a lot going on nationally, and really when I reached out to you, I wanted to talk about what was going on in the state of Georgia, about pensions, about retirement, but we happen to be in the throes of the coronavirus and market volatility. What's top of mind for you and the team in Georgia?
Yeah, for us right now, it's really about risk management as sort of the number one. It's a little bit unusual. This time of year it is the time of year when the General Assembly is in session, so we're always very concerned about tracking what's going on under the Gold Dome. But really, a lot of these sort of international events are hitting close to home for us, or we're worried about that. And so, my executive team and I have been, sitting down together and starting to put together plans for, how we would handle significant disruptions to our operations or our services, whether or not we were allowed to come into our building or had to go with a skeletal staff. So, kind of directly in the middle of that planning. And of course, the goal is to keep our employees as safe as possible, keep our members as safe as possible, and hopefully, as much as possible, minimize disruption to our service too. But that's really the number two thing. Number one is obviously the safety of our folks.
And this is certainly a national and international issue. When you refer to services, just to be clear so the audience is following along, you lead a team of executives who lead a team of employees who perform a lot of the administrative services related to the pension program. So it may be the issuances of checks, it may be taking telephone calls, it may be responding to inquiries, right? And the team also has responsibility for the DC plan, or defined contribution plan, as well.
Right. So on the DB side, as you say, the number one thing we have to do is make sure our people are getting paid. For folks who are on EFT or direct deposit, it's relatively straightforward. We can do that sort of remotely, but we have to figure out how we're going to handle those who are on checks. And of course, we're going through a campaign right now to try to encourage more and more people to go to direct deposit, but we still are going to have about at least 1,500 people who we're going to have to figure out how to do their monthly payments without the benefit of direct deposit. On the defined contribution side, we're outsourced to a third party, Alight Solutions, but they have been great. They've been proactive in reaching out to us and letting us know that they are very focused on this as well. And our folks have had conversations with them talking about things like, is the call center going to be open? The answer is yes. How are we going to handle, ongoing processing? A lot of that's already paperless. Even on our internal staff, our first look, we found out that all but 18 out of 100 or so employees that we have are currently capable of working remotely. So we're currently working to get those other 18 up to speed and get them signed up for whatever security protocols we need to make them telework able as well. So we're in decent shape, but we have a little ways to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's constant work, it's constant effort, and you have to reform your plans as things change on the ground. Jim, I want to start with the defined contribution plan. I would imagine some of this market volatility, and then we can talk a little about the DB plan, but the market volatility and some of the action related to the market and the coronavirus, I would imagine that generated some phone calls to your record keeper. And how has the record keeper responded, and how has your organization responded to the inquiries?
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, most of those calls were from concerned members. The Dow is going down 1,000 points, or there's a huge amount of volatility. what should I do? Should I sell? Should I get out of it? And of course, the correct answer is, basically, if you're a long-term investor, don't panic, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reasons that you had for investing the way you did, or whatever your allocation was, whatever those reasons were 2 weeks ago are still valid today. Whatever horizon you had 2 weeks ago hasn't really changed. And the long-term best answer is to stay the course. That is very difficult. It's really hard to look at your account every day and see it materially going down, even as you're continuing to make contributions. So I guess a piece of advice number 2 is don't look at your account every day. Have faith in the decisions that you made before, and do your best to stick with them. Of course, at the end of the day, the members have to sleep at night, so they're going to have to do what is best for them. But if they're asking my advice, it is patience.
Yeah, and that red, I agree with you. I mean, I think the great thing about the DC system, the retirement system, is also the hardest thing about the DC system is that you have access 24 hours a day to look at your account, to make trades, and the sense when something like this is happening is you get very emotional and you want to make changes. But when you see that red on the screen, it makes you, even if you love the color red, it makes you really nervous. And I can certainly understand that and how people feel.
If you look at the return charts for the last 2 weeks, it's a cliff. If you look at it for the last 10 years, it's one of several blips. And that's sort of the perspective that I encourage people to have.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right on that. That long-term perspective is going to get you through, and you need to think about how the stock market has done even in the last 10 years since the 2008 or 12 years since the 2008 crisis. Jim, you also have the unique role of sitting in some of the board meetings or in the board meetings with the pension plan. What's the mood, the reaction of many of the board members, the trustees who have that responsibility of oversight on investments and a lot of the ongoing proceedings of the plan?
I really haven't heard much from them. It's kind of ironic, actually. The last board meeting we had was February 20th, which is more or less the day before all of this extreme volatility has started occurring. So I was talking in that meeting about how our results year to date were pretty positive. And of course, that's changed a little bit in the last 2 weeks or so. But yeah, I really haven't been hearing from concerned trustees. I think, we've been talking to them for a long time about, and even in that meeting in February, I was talking to them about 10-year results and 10-year projections. And so, I think they're experienced enough and savvy enough to know that the long term is what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, you cannot, if you have a responsibility, and even if you're not truly a fiduciary under ERISA, you have the same mindset of protecting the benefits of members, retirees, and beneficiaries. That probably has to weigh pretty heavily on you, but you've got to do the right thing long term for the plan.
That's exactly right.
Well, Jim, I want to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk to Jim more about maybe some of the other things that are going on in the retirement system. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Jim Potvin. He is the Executive Director of the Employees Retirement System of the state of Georgia. Jim, thanks so much for sticking around with us this morning.
My pleasure.
And really interesting to learn about some of the contingency planning that you and the team are preparing for in terms of Corona and the market volatility. Let's shift gears. I want to look a little longer term because the plan is more than just Corona. The plan has to operate on a day-to-day basis, but also longer term. Would you mind sharing some insights into both the defined contribution plan and the public pension plan, public pension plans, I should say, related to the state of Georgia, just so we can understand?
Sure. So about 11 years ago, we implemented the current tier of retirement benefits for employees' retirement system members. And that is the so-called hybrid tier of the DB and the DC plan, as we were talking about earlier. This has really given us a different perspective on retirement benefits and retirement planning for our members. You know, before it was pretty much you enroll them in the plan, and 30 years later, you make sure they start getting their monthly benefit. But of course, managing DC plan assets, is a lot different. And to that end, it's been important to us to identify and work with great partners out in the industry. The current administrator for our defined contribution plans is Alight Solutions. And in fact, we just went through an RFP process. We're coming to the end of our current contract with them, and it had been about 10 years, so it was definitely time to go out there and talk to other respected members of the industry. And we got a lot of great feedback and a lot of great responses. But in the end, we did decide to stay with our current partnership with Alight. That is not to say that our administrative model will necessarily be the same. I believe that it does need to evolve, changing needs of the members, changing best practices in the environment and our own needs. Having the 2 plans and having them administered, one in-house and one by a third party, has sort of fractured our communication, where some stuff comes from Alight and some stuff comes from us. And I really want our people to look at their retirement as more of a single program rather than multiple fractured plans. And so kind of getting our communication aligned and maybe coming from the same place. And I'm talking about, we've already implemented combination statements, but upon new hire, upon termination, getting things processed, a single landing page for our 2 websites, stuff like that, where an individual just is saying, I need to find out about my retirement. They're not having to go to multiple places to do it.
Yeah, and that makes it easier for someone to participate in the plan, get information, be an active, a quote unquote active member. Jim, we had the passage of the Secure Act, and I want to ask you about this. Passage of the Secure Act late 2019 in the appropriations bill, and I'm sure you're aware of this. Obviously, you're in the you participate in NAGDA, NASRA, et cetera. That Secure Act included retirement income, and you mentioned the hybrid nature. You already have a pension plan today, so many members are getting some or will get some level of income in the future. Has your thought around retirement income changed at all as a result of the passage of Secure?
Actually, we started thinking about that before Secure was passed. We actually had a bill passed last year or the year before, we're currently implementing, that would allow our members who are both in the 401k and the defined benefit plan to use their 401k money to essentially roll it over into the defined benefit plan and basically annuitize it through the DB plan, using more or less the same basic calculation assumptions that we use to create the DB benefit. So, obviously there are certainly solutions out there in the marketplace through the private insurers and whatnot. This is probably just a first step, but to me it was important to get some kind of an option out there for our members to address one of the weaknesses of the DC system, which is the lifetime income idea. And that has been in the market. The marketplace has been talking about lifetime income for some number of years, and like I say, this is sort of our first attempt to address that, and it'll be live in January of next year.
Very interesting, and that seems like a very interesting and important step, especially for those who manage. I mean, maybe there's opportunity for other states and municipalities who have a pension and also have a DC plan to kind of think of how the two can work together, and it makes a lot of sense possibly to probably do that.
We didn't find a lot of examples out there yet. I know I talked to South Dakota quite a bit, and we modeled the idea after some of the stuff that they've been doing.
Yeah. Last question, Jim. You alluded to the fact that the legislature, which I think meets on an annual basis, if I'm not mistaken, to passed a bill related to retirement. How important is retirement? They deal with a lot of issues, obviously, as legislators representing different districts within the state. But how important, top of mind, is retirement savings? We've seen many states come up with, in-plan or IRA type programs for people who do not have access to a workplace retirement system. Could you share some of the insight there in terms of what legislators are thinking?
Sure. There are, if you just go by the volume of the number of bills, there are quite a few of them, several dozen of them that are out there. Most of them will not be passed, though, and of the ones that are, they're not necessarily going to be huge changes. Sort of the typical service purchase or transfer or things like that. So there's not a lot of enormous reform efforts. I think from a public finance standpoint, our folks downtown are more worried about just the basic state revenues and overall budget.
Sure.
It's been a very difficult process for them this year. Revenues were pretty flat in the first half of the fiscal year versus about a 2.5% to 3% projected growth rate. So there's a little bit of anxiety around revenues. They have come back some in the first part of 2020, but nevertheless, the governor has asked agencies to cut their budgets for this year by 4% and next year by 6%. And there's some negotiating going on between exactly what programs are going to be impacted and to what degree. So I think they're much more focused on that than on the retirement systems per se.
Yeah. Well, obviously governing is choosing, as it often is said. So good luck with that, and I'm sure that and good luck also with the coronavirus preparations. Jim Potvin, always great to talk with you, get your insight into what's happening in Georgia, but also what may be happening around the United States in terms of pensions. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. You too, Jeff.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a financial topic or someone of interest that we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Keep on saving and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.